You're listening to the Governor's Podcast, which is hosted by school governors for school governors and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governor's Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington and I support schools and academies as a governor, governance practitioner and a clerk. I'm also the CEO of the National Black Governors Network, supporting the education sector in diversifying their governing boards.
And it's Olivia D Hinds here, an under 30, unapologetically black female who is changing the face and space of school governance.
And you're listening to the Governor's Podcast. Okay, let's get into today's topic.
So now that we think things are settling back into a routine, I hate using the phrase going back, but with governor visits, how do you think those are going to look and feel for the academic year of 21-22?
I think it depends on the school or the academy, to be fair, because I think the real question to ask is, how often did they take place before
that's so true.
lockdown and the
how
pandemic?
Effective were they?
Right.
Or useful or
exactly.
Focused were
so
they?
I think the real question should be, and I think this should genuinely be on the agendas for the autumn term LGB or governing body. How can we revamp? How can we review, reflect, and move forward with governor visits being more meaningful, being more practical, and reporting back to the governing body? Because more often than not, governors will go in and then around the table, I as clerk will just hear, oh yeah, I came into the school on such and such a day, and things were great, and it's like, how do you even minute that? Does it doesn't mean anything. So I think I don't want to add extra burdens to governors, and I'm speaking as a governor.
Same.
If I went into my school, and I am looking forward to going into my school because I was appointed just before lockdown, so I haven't actually been in the school. I would at least want to write, and I'll use the word report loosely.
No, they're very useful. But I mean, they're very helpful.
I use it loosely in terms of
so
it shouldn't be onerous. Or a burden.
Yeah.
So a single side of A4.
Yes.
Maybe if there's a pro forma that has specific questions,
one of my schools has one of those.
Right. Then the governor is responding to those questions.
And it's used to aid you, because sometimes governors don't know exactly what to make a note of.
Right.
So it helps you with some sort of structure. The only thing to be careful of with people who do have those forms in place is not having too many questions on there where then the governor receives it and thinks, I've got to answer all of these. I've got to touch all of these bases.
That's why for me, I would say a single side of A4.
Yeah.
So maybe it's got 3 questions and you're looking for maybe 50 to 100 words per question, which 50 to 100 words is a good response.
And they can be in bullet points, bullet pointed sentences. As long as it's well constructed, it doesn't need to be storytelling.
And it's added to the agenda, and therefore it becomes part of the papers.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So it's then not in the meeting.
Just so, has anyone been in?
Yeah. Exactly. Because that is, or it's
and everyone just has their heads down, or I think also with that, because this is a conversation I've had recently with one of my schools, because it's September now, so all those conversations are restarting, or that engagement's restarting. And it's being careful of the governor visits not falling on the same governors.
Yes.
Every term or every academic year. So I don't know if there could be some way of doing a rotation of visits, so people know, okay, the visits I do happen in the autumn and the summer, the visits I do happen in the spring and the summer. I'm not saying everyone has to go in twice, but I think if you've got a governing body of 15 people,
every governor should visit the school at least once.
If you visit the school at least once, that's like approximately 2 people a month. And it's therefore not the same person feeling the pressure to go in 4 or 5 times a year because someone needs to visit the school and other people haven't.
I think, bear in mind, those governors that have link role responsibilities,
they
so
already
safeguarding,
have,
they have to go
I
in.
have that role for one of my
termly
schools.
At least. Send health and safety. If you've got a responsibility, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Because you must go into the school regularly.
To at least speak to
but that doesn't
member of staff.
That doesn't let the other governors off the hook.
No, it doesn't.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
I think there should be a schedule, and as you say, if you've got 15 governors,
split them.
5 in the autumn term, 5 in the spring term, 5 in the summer term.
Exactly.
And so everybody has gone in at least once.
Yes.
And it's also manageable for the school.
There you go. Yes, please, people, do let the school know if you want to go in. Please don't just show up. It is important.
No, and I think and I think if it's scheduled, and the more I think about it, the more
that's how it should be.
It should be. And if you schedule it around the governing body meeting. If your meetings are held in the evening, mine are held at 5:30 in the main, and so, for argument's sake, if you have an afternoon visit so that the governors can see the school live, meaning it's students are in and all of that. So at 2:00, so it's the last hour or hour and a half of school. Then they're still there, so it's only travelling once, especially if you've got governors travelling from a distance. They're only travelling once. They can have a discussion there, and whilst you won't have time to write a report for that governing body meeting, you can still do a written report and send it afterwards so it becomes part of the audit trail.
Or you can mention it verbally and then say that you've got the report will be a part of the next meeting's papers.
You can have a 5-minute, 10-minute feedback as part of the agenda.
Yeah.
And it's still fresh in your mind.
Because you've just done it. Yeah.
So, whichever way works for the school or the academy that you're in, but I think it should be now is the opportunity to review and reflect and put a structure in place. It's like I've just joined a board and I don't know when the next meeting is.
What?
And it's really frustrating because it's like
they haven't given you the dates.
Got no dates. They're organised almost ad hocly, and I just can't work like that. And
then I personally speaking, I think that can be seen as disrespectful to people's time and their time commitments and time management, because you're assuming that they'll just be readily available when you drop a date in.
It just makes it harder. They don't drop a date in. They'll send a series of dates, and then
but how many people are trying?
Right, you're doing it every time, and I have said I need
time
the dates
wasting
in the diary for the full year.
Yes.
And so going back to governor visits, things would be easier, in my opinion, if I know that I'm going to be in the school or I need to attend a governor visit, on the 1st of February 2022, because then I know it's there. And if for any reason a clash develops that is unavoidable, I know when the other governor visit dates are.
Yeah.
So I can swap with a governor.
There's that. Like you do at work, where people are like, can we change shifts? So the shift is still getting done, but different people are doing it.
Absolutely.
There's that. I also, how I do it is rather than schedule my visits on the day of an LGB, because I'm someone who doesn't like to waste time. So you suggesting going in at 2 for the last hour and a half of the school day, and the meeting's at 5:30. I'm thinking about the time between 3:30 and 5:30. So what I almost do is use the meetings as, say, okay, I want to visit the school, or a meeting with a senior member of staff inside the school ahead of the next LGB. So if I know an LGB meeting is happening on, I don't know, the 4th of March, sorry if that's a weekend, so it doesn't make sense, but on the 4th of March, then I will say I want to be in that school by, I don't know, mid-February or something, so that I can then have enough time to send in my paper, that report, and then I can report at that meeting. So I almost use the dates of the meeting to help me schedule when I visit.
And that's why I'm saying it has to be discussed at a local level and what works, because whereas for you that would work. I'm thinking of, I remember when I was clerk in a school and one of the governors lived out of the city, and it was literally a 4-hour round trip.
That'll be me soon.
To attend a meeting.
Yeah.
So for somebody like that,
yes,
attending a governor visit, it makes sense to hold it on the same day.
So maybe
and people people with, in terms of when the school day ends and the hour and a half or 2 hours before the meeting starts, some people will work during that time.
Yeah, of course, if they carry their laptop or something.
Yeah, others could have a meeting with the staff, because they're part of the stakeholder group as well. A meeting with the staff could take place. Again, to put faces to names, because in a school situation, 9 times out of 10, the governors are a picture on the website, and no member of staff have ever seen them.
If there's a picture of you on the website. So maybe it's a case of having the dates across the academic year. All of the meeting dates are included there, and then there's additional ones in between those, or however it works, so that because it's also not having confusion for governors where they have a date in their diary and they have to try and remember whether it's for a meeting or whether for a visit. But if it's a date where it's a meeting and a visit, the meeting's like a definite, a visit is if it's available to you during the day, then, it's just being mindful of individuals' diaries and just making the system as easy and straightforward as possible for people to slip in. Okay, what about the visits themselves? How do you know what to focus on?
I think all of that needs to be discussed, thought through beforehand, so that because you're not Ofsted.
No.
You're not inspectors.
Yeah.
So you're not there to judge or to observe.
And even if you are an Ofsted inspector who has a role as a governor, remember the hat that you're wearing.
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's important that members of staff are given the opportunity to highlight things that they wish to highlight to us as governors, and to inform rather than to inspect is the word. I remember I delivered a session on the role of the link governor. I was delivering training to some governors, and one of the things I said, I used a picture of a woman looking over a garden fence, and I was saying, imagine you've got a neighbour and you're looking into their garden and they're planting roses or flowers or whatever, and you hop over the fence, you pull up those roses and you move them to a different location in the garden because you believe that they're better suited there.
And it's the woman's garden.
And it's your neighbour's garden.
Your neighbour's garden.
Whereas you stand on your side of the fence and you ask your neighbour, oh, what type of roses are they?
Yeah.
Why did you plant them there? What soil have you used there, or compost have you used there? How often do you water them? Those kind.
Showing
so
interest.
You're there to ask questions, to find out more information.
Before.
You're not there to tell them what to do in their space.
Yeah. Wow.
And
that's quite an analogy,
Yeah.
It's quite. And the thing is, if I find from experience, if you give the staff members an opportunity to share what they're passionate about, share their field of expertise with you, what they know, what they've been doing, then they're more receptive to additional ideas and things that they haven't considered, and therefore having you as a sounding board rather than dreading you coming in.
Absolutely.
You don't want people to dread you coming in. It's like, I would say I have quite a good relationship with the designated safeguarding lead at one of my schools, because I'm the safeguarding link governor. And I'm always left in awe of how much he knows. And it gives me confidence as a safeguarding link governor to know that there's someone in the school who's very knowledgeable. I remember the last visit I did, it was towards the end of the last academic year, so it was in the last term. And everything I asked, he answered.
Yeah.
But it was based on him outlining before I attended the key things he wanted to show me, down to one thing that wasn't mandatory for him to invite me into, but he wanted to, because he wanted to make sure he was doing his own checks and balances. And he's like, this extra layer or extra pair of eyes to look at it would actually give me more comfort in me, checking that I've covered as many bases as possible. So even though it's not necessary, it will be useful.
Yeah.
And then it turns out there were a couple of things I asked, I would say just random things, just practical things. Not saying that I went in saying these are the questions that I'm definitely going to ask. Just as he was talking through a system, I think it was the single central record system. There's a question that I asked. I think he was showing me the spreadsheet, and there was a column that I didn't understand as to why that was there. And he said, you know what? When you're looking at something every day or every week, it's so easy to not see or not question why some things are there or some things are not there. So I'm so grateful that you're here and you asked that question. And for me, it was just a very simple question. Why is that there? I'm not sure. Can you tell me? Not as like an accusatory question, as in
a challenge
or anything like that. So I would say definitely be sensitive to the fact, especially if you're not an educationalist, so you don't know how a school system works. So allow them to present just like you would do in any other situation. You allow the presenter to present, and then there's a Q&A.
Yeah.
And the Q&A is either from genuine interest, to gain more information, or to make a suggestion, but not to say this is what you should be doing because what you're doing is bad. You don't want to do that.
And especially if you're an educationist, just because in your own setting, if you're a teacher in another school, or whatever.
If you do something differently, if you're a teacher in another school and you're a governor in a different school, and so you're coming in with your education hat, because
I would say
natural.
Avoid your subject.
There's that too.
Avoid your subject or avoid your year group. You're there to learn as much as.
But it's about
recognizing
that you're wearing a different hat. You're not being a teacher in your school or in a different school. You're being a governor in this school. And also recognizing that the school context could be completely different. So therefore, what will work in one area may not work in another area. The context could be as different as it's a different key stage. It's a different number of students in that year group. It's a different personality in terms of teaching style.
It's a different Ofsted grading.
If
you go into an outstanding school, it's going to be very different.
Different
the energy
location
is going to be different.
All of
to
that.
One that's just been placed in measures.
Exactly. The goals are different. The vision is different. The ethos is different. The uniform's different. The students, everything is different. So it may require a different approach. So it's about looking at that. So governor visits is very much about self-awareness first, and then understanding context, and then recognizing that it's a relationship that you're developing between you as an individual governor and the school, but then also knowing that as an independent governor, you're also part of a wider group of governors. And so you don't want anyone to feel like there's that bad energy, or we don't want that governor to come in, but when that governor comes in, it's nice, it's fun. So it's about knowing what our expectations are as governors and making sure we have an open dialogue about that, because you could have a governor come in and expect to see one thing, and another governor expects to see something completely different. There needs to be some sort of thread across all of us that especially if it's like excellence or opportunity or collaboration or something like that, it's about us knowing what the overall ethos is, and then we can look for where we see it in this particular area.
And I think it's also important. I was witness to this. I'm going to try and summarize it. A group of governors, maybe 2 or 3 governors, did a governor visit unannounced, which was the first red flag.
Yeah.
And they were accommodated because they're governors, obviously. And the experience in the classroom was that the behaviour wasn't properly managed.
Yeah.
And instead of going back to the head of year or to the head, they brought it to the governing body meeting.
Okay.
So it was, completely left field
Just
for
bypass,
for the head.
Yeah.
And it was very accusatory. And it turned out that they had been in a classroom with a newly qualified teacher. The students were very boisterous. Somebody who was finding it challenging anyway, and was then completely flustered by this visit.
Yeah.
So there were a set of circumstances that sort of created this situation and this experience. But my thing was that you should have, as governors, spoken with the school first.
So the chain of communication.
Yeah, not brought it to the... you should have first taken responsibility for what you did.
Turning up unannounced.
Yeah. And secondly, bringing it to the governing body in that way.
Yes.
Just caused friction that didn't need to be there. Because as I say, you're not there as inspectors. You're not there to catch anybody off guard or anything like that. You always have to remain strategic. You're not operational.
100%.
And this goes back to a previous episode where we talked about length of service. One of the governors on that visit had been there for, let's just say, more than 3 terms.
Oh, and each term is 4 years.
Yes.
So that's 12 years.
12 years. And so
over 2 generations through the school.
So it was almost like this wasn't how it used to be.
Oh, dear Lord.
Kind of thing. That was. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not even going to minute this, because this is so wrong on every level.
That's with your clerk in hand.
Yeah, this is just so wrong on every level, and I'm not going to commit this to the record.
Yeah.
When it's clear to me that this that this shouldn't have happened the way it happened.
There were so many things that could have been done better.
Right. So it's really, really important that we as governors are respectful of our schools, the staff, the things they've been through and continue to go through, the challenges that they're facing. And that's not to say, if the school is in measures or in RI, then yes, there are things. And if a focus of the school is raising standards in maths or English or biology or whatever the subject, then of course focus and challenge. But you're not there to catch anybody out. No. You're not there to beat anybody up, especially in a situation where the last 18 months have been so difficult for everybody. But in my opinion, I am so glad I'm not in a school, and I'm so glad I don't have school-age children.
I am very grateful for that. I'm grateful,
because I can't imagine that kind of pressure.
I recognise the work that teachers do, and that's why, as governors, you want the best outcomes for your school, and therefore, you want to support the teachers so that they can serve the students in the best way possible, and all the staff and the extended school community. So coming in with that kind of attitude or intention speaks to what kind of governor you want to be or human you are. So I would say it's very important to look at that. And I think we talked about that in a previous episode about why did you become a governor? What was your reason? Is it purely for the title? Is it a sense of power, status, superiority? Or is it because you genuinely want to be a part of change, invest in current and future generations, make the education system a better system in your area, in your area of influence, because then that will come out in the way you conduct yourself in those meetings, at those governor visits, and all times in between.
Yeah.
And so just hearing that is actually quite, distasteful when you think about it. I can't imagine being around the table as a governor colleague and hearing someone just almost attack the school and direct it at a very specific teacher, not knowing the background,
the backstory,
and not even taking into consideration that you may have been in the wrong.
Exactly. It was like, I was so appalled.
Yeah.
And in situations like that, I'm quite frustrated that I'm Clerk.
Because you want to say something.
I almost want to be part of the discussion, and I'm not there for that.
Yeah.
To be able to say, I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I think there should really be, when you think of governors being, I think this is kind of dipping into the takeaways, I guess. When you think of governor visits, think of it as part of your governance strategic plan. Why do we have them? Why do we want them? And why should we do them? And then get into the how. Like, how do we actually execute it on a strategic level so that all governors and the senior leadership team are aware of what the intention of governor visits are, or the intentions are, and what that will look like for this academic year, because the strategic plan can change year on year, especially when you've got schools that are going through major changes, such as if they're expanding numbers. That will change the way governor visits look. And let me just add a note here. Governor visits does not include the evening events just for you to attend as part of interest.
Like the socials.
Yes, no, it doesn't include that. It means being in the school.
Seeing the school live.
Exactly.
On an average day.
There you go. You're going to talk about a specific department or, area that supports staff members, such as well-being or something. So having a strategic plan, not being afraid to talk about it, and sharing the responsibility across the governing body so that it doesn't always fall on the chair and the vice chair just because they lead the governing body. If you don't have a link governor role, I think sometimes you should be the front runners for those those additional visits outside of link governor responsibilities.
Shadow a link governor.
There's that too, especially if you're new. It's a way of easing you in. That could also be a part of succession planning, which I know we've touched on last season. So I would say really build a strategic plan, and your clerk can help you with this because seeing as though they're the coordinator in governance. So I would say really plan a strategic plan, or really execute or create a strategic plan around governor visits. And then once you have one in place, then you can always make changes and adjustments as you go along. But I think having that skeleton there first helps so that everyone else is guided. And that could include, like for example, one of my schools, I don't want to say a rule, but you're told that when you come in, you have to join 2 committees.
Yes.
It could be something that you put in place
that you have to commit to visit the school at least
twice a year or something.
Twice a year.
Twice an academic year. So then that means any new people coming in, they're already on board. They know what's
the structure
expected of them. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And this is why planning is important. And then execute that plan. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paperwork.
Absolutely.
So
that's my takeaway really. Both as clerk to initiate the discussion and the plan, because one of my trusts has had, I think, 4 new trustees during the course of the lockdown who haven't been in any of the academies.
Right.
So getting that sorted is really important. And then my maintained school, we've just had 3 new governors who haven't been in the schools. So, and I as governor haven't been in my school.
There you go.
So it's very much at the forefront of my mind, but I am driven by my diary, meaning not that my diary drives me.
No, but it helps you
I have
to
get
organise,
the
yeah.
dates in my diary.
I love that too.
Because I do so many different things. If it's not in my diary, then it's
I don't
unlikely
see
to
it.
happen.
Yeah.
And if it's in my diary, then at least I can tick that off the list and say, yes, I know that those are scheduled
Yes.
and that's going to happen.
Date and time. Because sometimes holding a date up
that
until
doesn't-
the week before,
that
there's
doesn't
no
work.
guarantee that I'll still be available on that date.
No.
So
And that's why I struggle with panels, really, because panels you can't.
Oh, because you're a
can't
slot?
book in advance. You never know when an exclusion is going to take place, or a grievance, or a complaint, or whatever. So I struggle with those. But anything that can be pre-planned and scheduled in advance, then I'm happy to support in that way.
Yeah, obviously you do as much as possible in advance. So yeah.
Good. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governor's Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governor's Podcast. Let's connect.